You are listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. I'm Elena Paweta, Executive Communication Coach and TEDx organizer. With each episode, I'll share with you communication tips and ideas from top business leaders to help you excel in your career. Welcome to the next episode of Ideas and Leaders podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Julie Noonan. She's an executive coach, transformational change leader, speaker, consultant, and futurist. And today, we are going to speak about change in business, how it impacts leaders, and what can we do with this? How can we manage it? Hi, Julie. It's great to have you on Ideas and Leaders.
Thank you, Elena. I'm really happy to be here.
So, Julie, it's great to have you, and I would really love to know the story behind what you do. So, how did you start doing what you're doing right now?
Well, that goes back quite a ways. I started with a master's degree in English literature, which doesn't sound like that it would fit into a corporate career or, a consulting career. However, what I found was when I ran into the discipline of change management and I started really looking into that, what I realized was the study of English literature is the study of humans and human behavior under stress. And when I saw change management as a discipline, I saw the same thing, only in a corporate or a business environment. And so my studies of English literature really have led me to really appreciate the way that we can lead people through the changes, help them manage the changes for themselves, and really get through it in a very nice way, in a very easy, flowing, smooth way, as opposed to fighting it.
Yeah, it is great how you connected the dots and saw the similarities and changed the path of your career. I think that definitely we are under big amount of stress in business currently, and we see more and more stress everywhere. We have this pandemic situation, we have political situation, and some every day we hear something new. So I think that definitely change is there on an everyday basis. And I know that you're helping leaders with managing and coping with change. So what problems do you see in the corporate environment as the biggest problems right now in terms of current changes?
Wow. It would probably be easier to answer what is not changing. Actually, everything is changing. Probably the biggest things that I run across right now are the digital transformation initiatives that are going on within large corporations. Data and digital are really taking off. It's more, decision-making is more based on data that's gathered. And many times what I find is that the more data you have, the more confusing it can be, as opposed to being simple. So that's one thing. And I often coach leaders about how to, in their minds at least, simplify the data and what the data is telling them into a story. So then they can make a good decision. Another big issue right now, and this is, all over the news, obviously, is remote work, hybrid working models, working in teams where you've never actually met any of the people that you work with. And how does that work? How do you blend? How do you continue to build a culture when you never see anybody in person? So that's another one that many of my clients are struggling with. And then probably the biggest one for my coaching clients in particular is the longer that they're in the workforce, the more they realize that it's very easy to become obsolete before you're done working. So it's almost impossible to keep up. with all of the changes, all of the new business models, all of the new marketing strategies, the globalization of many industries. And a lot of my clients really struggle with relating to the younger generations, new technologies, and learning those new technologies and feeling comfortable with them. And then also leaving a legacy and being willing to learn all the way up until and after retirement. So
Yeah.
those are the big ones that I'm seeing right now.
Yes, and actually, we are covering some of those issues from time to time on our podcast on Ideas and Leaders. So it is great that we are speaking about it right now. And I wanted to especially focus on the last one maybe right now, because I think that it is very related to the first one as well. So we have huge technological transformation. Every day we hear about new apps, new programs, new software, robots, and especially in the corporate environment, we have so many new things that we just cannot keep up. And speaking about executives, usually those are people from the previous generations who grew up without any technology, and it is hard for them even to manage, laptop and the basic things. It was hard for them in the beginning. And how do you see the solution to this problem? How can we manage this balance? Because for sure we need those experienced people in our companies, but we also need to keep up with this technology pace.
Absolutely. There are a couple of things that I've noticed in working with the executives, and particularly in the last part of the boomer generation. And I will admit that I am one of those. I am the last year of the boomers, so I can relate. I did not have, technology when I was in college, and it has taken, every single time a technology has changed over my work span, it has taken more and more energy to keep up with it. The speed has been exponential over the last, 10 to 20 years, to the point that there isn't any one person in my mind who understands the whole thing. So one thing that I've noticed that the executives who want to stay ahead of the game will do is that they are looking for really good, trusted technology partners. And these are partners that not only know a lot about technology, but also are leaders, because they then, the ones that are being more successful are actually putting a lot of trust into those technologists. That's number one. Number two, another trend that I'm seeing, and one that I love, is the reverse mentoring trend, where we actually set up younger generation employees with the older generation employees and allow them to mentor each other. So the younger generation gets the basic business, the experience, the lessons learned, and a lot of the down and dirty people skills and leadership skills. They get examples of that. And what the boomers get from the millennials and the Gen Z is exposure to the newest technologies and exposure to the newest marketing strategies, social media, influencers, how things actually work with their demographics and how to speak with their demographic populations. So it has been really interesting to watch where there is acceptance, to watch this interplay has been wonderful. One of the downsides, I think, is when you do a program like this internally to a company, you still have the power play attached. No matter what you do, you still have this is someone who is senior to me and has some say over my career versus this is a new person in the organization. So balancing those dynamics with a third party like HR or like a strategy group or a consultant even really helps out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great that you mentioned this issue, because as you were speaking about reverse mentoring, I was thinking that there can be resistance from both sides, because younger generation, they see this power distance and maybe they're afraid to approach an executive, to ask them to some questions, to ask them for mentoring. And also leaders and executives, maybe they also are hesitant to approach a new person, a young person in the company. So if there should be a program that is managed by HR or managed by someone that is kind of structured and organized, right?
Absolutely. That sets the expectations and puts up some guidelines, also pre-qualifies both sides so that the objective of the mentoring is learning on both sides. So it's not, I'm the sage and I'm going to give you all of my wisdom from the last 40 years. Well, frankly, if I were a millennial, I would say, times have changed. Not all that you've learned is applicable, but I would like to hear what is applicable to now. And so kind of qualifying the two participants and setting the guidelines is something that a third party can do for the organization in that regard.
Yeah. And we know about the, typical stereotypes about different generations and the conflicts between generations. But now, do you see that some of those things are changing after the COVID pandemic?
They are, but they're not changing as fast as they need to, frankly. I think the definition of leadership itself has to change. Because we are no longer in the Industrial Revolution. We are no longer, for the most part, generating, products and making things as much as we used to. The top-down approach, I'm just going to tell them what to do and they'll do it, never works. And frankly, in my 30 years of change management, that never worked anyway. Unless people are motivated by what they feel like is the right way to go. And whenever you have a telling as opposed to a collaboration, you're not going to get the results that you really want, which is everyone bought in, everyone adopting the new, and excited about the new change and the new future that we're building together. So
yeah, I can see also that the perception of business is changing also among the older generations, because before it was the younger generations were accused of prioritizing their private lives, and they wanted to have satisfaction from their work and not just work and earn money as some older generations used to do. But now, after this working at home period, the pandemic period, I can see the change in the perception of work. And I think that for those differences, they are getting less and less visible, because I think that people, all people of all generations, they want this work-life balance right now, because they feel how valuable it is, right?
Well, the funny thing is, I think the former generation, the boomer generation, wanted it to begin with. But as soon as somebody else wanted it, then, the values clash came in to play, because if we didn't think of it, it must not be a good idea. So sorry, boomers, but I'm telling on us. But yeah, it's, I don't think anyone is going to argue about, yes, I would like more time with my family. Yes, I would like more flexibility. Where the values tend to collide is when someone has feels like that they have worked their whole career and the expectation on them was 80 hours a week, grind, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. And the younger generation, even though they are absolutely right that it needs to be more balanced, it could appear that they, are not willing to work as hard. The interesting thing is, though, they're not willing to work as hard. But that's not a bad thing. So what we're having, we're resetting, we're recalibrating what work really looks like, and how we're not living to work, but we're working to live. So work becomes the second or third most important thing, not the number one most important thing. And that's just, it's difficult when you've been stewing in the same value set for 40 years. It's difficult to change that value set.
Yes, especially that we have a lot of new technology to help us right now, and
Absolutely.
we can do tasks that we used to do 20 years ago. We can do them now much faster, much more effective, and
Yes.
the way of work is changing itself. So we can actually do much more in a shorter amount of time. I think that this is the change of the paradigm, as you said, the change of the concept of leadership, and the concept of how we work itself is changing. So do you see any ways what we can introduce in our organizations in order to reduce the negative effect of COVID pandemic, to make it more smooth for teams, for leaders? So what we can do right now to make this remote work a little bit easier and more pleasant for us, and effective, of course.
Oh, there are obviously a lot of things that we can do. I think the most effective aren't necessarily the tactical things. I think the most effective thing we can do is to continue to talk about being open-minded, being curious as opposed to judgmental, of both, of everyone in the workforce, not just of any particular generation, but and obviously having a learning mindset, a learning organization where the culture is, I am learning, everyone is learning on a daily basis. And I might not know how to do this thing, but you do know how to do this thing. I know how to do this other thing, and you don't know how to do this other thing. Let's get together and figure out how we can get things done. I think it's the attitudes that need to change. It's it's probably a lot like our country. We need to let go of the us versus them and really take a look at, what do we want this company to be? What contribution do we want this company to have to the world? What do we want the employee experience to be? And are we truly serving each other, our own families, as well as our customers and their families? It's really the mindset that we really need to change, as opposed to tactics, I think, at this point.
Yeah. So we need to focus on our values, on our goals, rather than on KPIs, right?
Yes. Yes. And I say this in the middle of the digital and data era, but it really does come down to attitudes. It comes down to human emotion, motivation, because if a data point isn't going to necessarily increase your motivation unless that data point is tied to a value that you hold or a good that you're doing in the world that you believe in, so
Yeah.
I think it really needs to be bigger than any one company. It needs to be an internal change
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
everyone
definitely.
involved.
Yeah. And what about team leadership? So do you introduce some of the tools or give some suggestions to your clients on how to actually make sure that your team is still a team and not just people sitting alone by their laptops at home? So what can we do as leaders to actually engage our teams to make them feel as a team and to make them feel those values you're talking about also?
Well, it's very interesting. One of the things that I have observed in the clients that I've worked with, the team members themselves aren't necessarily having a problem with that because they're working together on projects or, getting their work done from an operational standpoint on a daily basis. What's missing is the leader sometimes being a part of that process, because they're constantly drawn up into strategy or into, corporate politics or into, being with their peers. And what happens is the team is doing just fine. And then all of a sudden the leader swoops in and says, oh, how's everybody doing? I've been worried about you, blah, blah, blah. And the team is like, we're fine. Where have you been? So what I would say is that, being intentional as a leader about having touch points within the team, not just with your direct reports, but with the entire team. So, participate in some of the team meetings, give a little update at the beginning. You don't have to be there the whole time, but at least let them see you, and keep reinforcing to them, here is how your contribution is really driving our company's agenda and our goals and our success. That most of all gets lost when people are not directly connected. And the other thing too that I would say for leaders is to recognize that everybody on your team is a human being with human problems and human emotions and families, et cetera, et cetera. And without being, intrusive, there is a way for you to just ask, hey, how's it going? How's the family? What did you do on vacation? Was it great? Did you get some relaxation? Sometimes that's really all you need to do. And the final thing, I think, and I've only seen this happen once, but it was probably the most touching thing that I've ever seen a leader do. Big change. She sponsored this change. It was hard and it was tough and it was gut-wrenching to do this particular change. And she had 65 people across the state who helped in the effort. And she wrote every single one of them a handwritten thank you note with something unique and special, not just, let's stamp it and move on. To the extent that a leader is able to appear as a human being and take time is our most valuable commodity. Take time to really get to know their teams. The culture is going to happen. It's going to be there and the teamwork will be there. But when you don't care or you appear not to care, that's when you lose your team, and they'll glom up. They'll be doing a fine job within each other, but you're outside of that circle then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Great. So it comes down to interpersonal relationships, human relationships. We don't need all those, fancy team building initiatives. It is sometimes enough just to ask, how are you? How's your family? And
Absolutely.
be closer to your team members. Yes, thank you so much for reminding us about this, Julie, because it is so simple, but very often we forget about it, especially in those changes and problems that every day brings us. So thank you so much, Julie, for this conversation. It was such a pleasure talking to you. So many amazing insights we learned from you today. So Julie, where can we contact you? How can we find you if our listeners want to reach out to you after they listen to us?
You can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find me, Julie Noonan. You can also take a look at my website, which is www.jnoonanconsulting.com.
Perfect. Julie, we'll put all those links under our episode so that our listeners can immediately click and reach out to you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, Julie.
Same here. Thank you so much, Elena.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Ideas and Leaders podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Let me know that you listened by tagging me in your LinkedIn profile and using a hashtag Ideas and Leaders. See you in the next episode.